Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Nima podcast, where I interview creatives, artists, and innovators about their worldviews and stories. So today I'm joined by my guest, Lewie Wilkinson. I hope I pronounced that right.
You
Um,
did? Yeah.
nice. Who goes by the artist name LaserLewDude. Uh, Louis is a laser artist who makes physical light structures using lasers, glass, and mirrors. And he's been selling his works as NFTs since February 2021, and you can find his works on Super Rare, Instagram, and Twitter under LaserLewDude. So, Louis, welcome to the podcast, man. It's good to finally have you on after being friends for a little while now.
Heck yeah.
Man, I appreciate you on. Um, so, could you give a brief overview of your story, sort of where you come from and what you do?
Yeah, it's I can make it as brief or as lengthy as you want, but I guess from the bottom up, I am not an artist or by education or anything. I did not attempt to be an artist, I should say. So I work in cybersecurity and have for 7+ years, and I did some other IT work before that. But in my background, I have a college degree in informatics and minor in atmospheric sciences. So I was very interested in the weather and computers and things of that nature. And around 2017, summer of 2017, I set out to build my first laser. I was replacing a laser pointer that I had lost a year prior. And it was more or less just a challenge to myself, being scientific minded and mechanical in nature. I figured I could probably learn how to do this, and it wasn't as easy as I thought by any means. But I sat out on the Google Quest. I don't know if anybody's like me, but I typically make a little folder for whatever my brain's kind of focused on now, and I had a bunch of links that were, how in the world am I going to build a laser? So I'll fast forward and we can dive into it more if you want at any point. But I figured out how to build the lasers and built lasers in my garage for a while. Started doing some handheld pointers, super high powered stuff. Eventually built my first laser projector, RGB projector, and just kept kind of progressing in a way of how can I manipulate the lasers to do different things. So basically got bored with just looking at straight beams. I wanted to see if I could make them bounce around and introduce different things that would make them refract. So I started collecting first surface mirrors, and over time introducing just pieces of glass, so decoration, if you will. It really just went down a rabbit hole of experimentation. Literally, just a lot of times finding a new tool or a new piece of glass or a new mirror, and then an idea pops in my head of how I can get the lasers to interact with this or bounce around it so it looks cool and take a picture. So for the longest time, that's what I was doing. I was just sharing it with colleagues, at my normie job, until I was basically forced into making an Instagram account. I don't remember exactly what year that was, maybe the end of 2018 or something like that. And so that's when I got into the social media and started posting stuff and gathering likes until the NFT Web3 world kind of sucked me into it. I was just making stuff for fun. I tried selling some prints here or there and did a live install, but honestly was in the hole as far as a hobby's concerned, and how much money I'd spent in building lasers for years. So not until Web3 was I able to actually monetize some of my work, and that really changed a lot of things. I'm a family man. I've got 5 kids and a wife and a bunch of dogs and cats and responsibilities. So I haven't made the leap away from the corporate world because I got to pay bills and keep people on my insurance. But that's my ultimate goal is hopefully I can make a sustainable living and still hold insurance for my family. And we'll go from there.
Okay, amazing, man. That's a really cool story, and yeah, leaves a lot of questions to be asked. So, um, so did creativity play a part in your life when you were growing up, or were you mostly just like scientific minded?
That's an awesome question. I definitely don't really harbor any other artistic skills. So as far as drawing, I am a terrible drawer, painter, all of those things. If it came to making something though, like the art classes where we introduced arts more like crafty type of with yarn and making clay pottery or something along those lines. I loved doing those types of things, but put like a piece of paper in front of me, unless I have a ruler. And this is where it starts getting more, mathematical and scientific. And I'm like drawing, angles that are planned out and, making more geometric type of shapes. I'm pretty much lost. If I do just sit down and start doodling, there might be some sort of abstract, flowy type of output, but for the most part, I'm drawing straight lines and making more geometric shapes. So I think overall, much more scientific in nature and not super creative. But I think the creativity that kind of comes from me is more of a resourcefulness type of engineering type of troubleshooting. So being creative and how am I going to solve this problem? Kind of thinking outside the box or not being afraid to experiment and to solve a problem. I think that's really the genesis of my creativity when it comes down to it.
That's really interesting. And I actually relate with that because you might know, but my background was also in engineering. I did aerospace engineering. And yeah, creativity wasn't a big part of my life, but now I feel like I use that sort of the problem solving skills they talk about and the resourcefulness in a creative way. So yeah, I guess it comes together that way for us. So yeah, you said you started when you first started playing around with lasers. You were just trying to build a laser for yourself. Okay, firstly, why lasers? and, and from there, once you started, how did it progress from just playing around with lasers to you seeing it as artwork?
Yeah, great question. So why lasers? Lasers have always been fascinating to me. It was never an obsession or anything that I really explored deeply, like before I built my first one, but it was always these things are badass. And if I did have one, it was like the coolest, gadget I owned. And it just fascinated. I mean, absolutely fascinates me that you can take, this tiny little, almost microscopic diode and create so much light from it that not only can you point it across the room or see a dot across the football field, but if it's strong enough or you have enough particulate matter in the atmosphere that you can see the beam, and it still blows my mind that you can accomplish that with such a small piece of electronics. So like I said, I wasn't like super obsessed with it, but I've always enjoyed light. And whether that's like flashlights or colored lights or whatever, but just manipulating light through glass. It's been another thing it's always been there, but I never took the time to say, let me see what I can do with a light and some glass and do whatever. It was just kind of like at the moment, oh, I caught this light going through this glass. And it was always something that, for as long as I can remember, just appreciating the wow effect of it and the science behind it and how this is actually working. It looks so cool to me and why my brain likes it. So I think it's so many things happened in my journey that just happened and it wasn't really planned, but absolutely made sense as to why I landed on the laser. I mean, it could have been, more of like a light painting type of thing where I might have tried to make some sort of cool torch or cool device to do long exposures in light painting. And the way that, I'm kind of like an all or nothing. I become very, very involved and almost obsessed with something and go all in. And so I think the fact that it was a laser is kind of by chance, but it's always been one of those things where I've always been just absolutely fascinated by that, but never took the time to get into it until I finally did. I don't remember the second part of the question.
A great answer. Second part of the question was, how long did it take, or what was the process from you just playing around until you seeing it as art, what you were doing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, from the very, very first time I actually got a laser to laze and actually like created a beam, having the phone always on your hip and being like, take a picture is just one of those kind of muscle reactions right now. Who am I going to share it with? I have no idea. At the time, it was just like, wow, let me capture this so I can go look at it. But I think, through time and sharing different things and people always wanting to give feedback, right? So it's wow, that looks really cool. Have you tried this? And I love that, right? Like give me new ideas, but it's always one of those things where nobody else really has the tools or the ability to try these things. So it's really, really natural for someone to say, have you tried this? Instead of them kind of keeping that to themselves and going back to their computer and trying it for themselves. It's relying on me to try this. So I think really being pushed by other people as I did start sharing it with coworkers and my family and whoever, to kind of give me new ideas and spark new creativity. There is an individual, so the place where I learned how to build a laser, the first community of laserists, hobbyists that I joined was laserpointerforums.com. And I did find some inspiration, not right off the bat, but after I started building them, just looking through some archives where a man named Bruce Muir, he's out of, I believe, Brooklyn, isn't really on any social media. You can find his pictures on Flickr. I saw a picture where he had used a crystal ball and had passed some beams behind it. And at the time, I mean, it's still one of the only, myself and this guy, I don't really see any of this art anywhere else, but seeing that, light bulbs go off in my head. It's like, okay, this is kind of where you need to start going, start looking at this, start using other glass in front of it. Because before that, it was just mirrors on the wall, and can I get this to kind of snake up the wall or go around the garage? So seeing that and somebody actually capturing it as like an art piece was one of those moments where it's like, okay, let's go down this path. Let's start collecting things, start experimenting differently, and working out that kind of thing.
Sweet. So I'm glad you came to that conclusion.
Thanks.
Would you be able to describe your sort of artistic or creative process with the lasers now? Sort of how you go about sourcing the glassware and then the lasers, how you go about making them or sourcing them, and then how you set it all up to create new scenes each time?
Yeah. So over time, it did change a little bit. So where I was primarily focused in for a long time building inventory, if you will, once I had built a bunch of high-powered pointers, I then realized these are too high-powered, and these aren't really the best tools for what I'm really going after. You set up these high-powered pointers, and you take a picture of them, and it's just like a blur because it's so overexposed. You can't really blend any colors. You're not getting any sort of shapes out of it that you want. It's just a bunch of light. And they're dangerous, and you can't run them forever. So even if you do have a nice, you gotta like have a timer on it to turn off the laser and let it cool down, or you end up burning out the diode. So once I realized this, I started building lasers that were more conducive to what I wanted to do. So building lab style modules, they call them labbies for short, that run off of 12 volts. So you can use a wall wart or a power supply that isn't a battery, and has really good heat sinking, and even has a little fan on the back, so you have constant cooling. And since I am running these much turned down as much as possible, like the name of the game really is like get the output to be really low and then bring it up as you need to. These can run forever. So if I'm moving around different pieces of glass, or if I'm rearranging the position of the lasers or the position of the mirrors or all of the above, I don't have to worry about turning them on and off. I don't really have to worry about, am I going to burn a hole in something? I don't really have to worry about, is my battery going to run out and I got to keep batteries charged? All those things kind of went away, and now you have time to like focus on the other things, and that would be, as I'm collecting glass or collecting mirrors, I'm not having to think about, do I have all these lasers? So I accumulated over time, one of each color, if you will. So the whole rainbow isn't available as diodes. So you have certain parts of the rainbows, and you can get a lot of different colors as diodes. But basically, I made one of each, and then realized, hey, I really want two of each. So I've got 2 or 3 of each, and so once I got to that point, now my process is more around, let's design what we want to see, and a lot of that spark comes from a new piece of glass. So whether I am out shopping, and that's like thrift shopping, or if I've gone on eBay and bought some stuff. I've made some friends through Instagram that make glass. One of my most go-to guys I made, as a friend in the Web3 space, Rob, or Pong, if you will. So he's making glass, but typically now it's I'm getting a new piece of glass, or my wife will pick it up if she's out at TJ Maxx and there's a Home Goods next door. She'll pick me up a candle holder or something crazy, or send me pictures while she's there. And will this work? Do you like this? So that's cool to have like multiple people looking for glass for me. But glass comes to me, and it doesn't take but half a second to be like, okay, this is going to look really cool if I do XYZ. And so like a kind of a plan starts to form. So I go into the closet and quickly either realize that that was a great plan, or a happy accident will occur, and I find that that was a great start, but I should really go this way. And so and that happens too, like throughout a build. I'll be building and be like, oh wow, that's really cool, and I hope I can come back to it, but I really want to go this direction, and I may or may not come back to it. So it's really an evolving thing as I'm in there. There's a lot of improvisation, and realizing halfway through it, you know what, this one piece of glass isn't the best. Let's swap it out with something else, and then it just changes. So I will make little sketches from time to time when I have an idea. And I'm not near the closet. My sketches, like I said, are absolutely terrible. So if I don't come back to them within 24 hours, even sometimes I'm just like, I have no idea what I meant there in my sketch. But other times, it comes together and it's pretty darn close to what I sketched out. But I'm of the opinion, like, any of this work that I'm doing, even when I get to the point of like, that's a freaking great shot, it's never done. Like, it can always evolve a little bit more. So people will ask if I am somewhere, and I'm in the middle of New York and I'm building this. They're like, how close are you to being done? And it's hard for me to answer that ever. It's like, well, be done right now. And I think this is pretty presentable, and people are liking this, and most of the time they'd agree. But at the same time, like, if you left me here for another 6 hours, I'm probably going to change it a million times, and I still won't be done. So my process really is go in there and not, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, but not try to pigeonhole myself into like one style or one particular shot that I'm going after, because there are just an infinite number of possibilities. And I do get carried away, and a lot of times, like, the stuff that is more appreciated is the minimal work. So the very minimalistic, just one beam, one piece of glass, just super super simple stuff. But I might start there and go way beyond that, and then at the end of the night, one of the last things I like to do is turn the lasers off one by one and take pictures as I do that. And sometimes it turns out being like, okay, I had way too many lasers going on, and while like I enjoyed that, the actual picture looks best if those lasers aren't even on, and you can focus more on the glass if there's only one or two beams instead of 7,000. So it's super experimental. There is some pre-planning, but it often never turns out exactly the way I even thought it was going to start out. So
that's really great to hear about your process. Obviously, it's quite unique and resourceful for sure, and I feel like you just built it up yourself in your own way.
it is, yeah, it's of the mirrors that I use, or any of the stands that I use, anything that I use, period, there is no laser art shop, right? You don't go to the art store down the street and say, hey, where's your laser art section? I need some new mirrors that can do this, or some new clamps that can hold this type of glass, right? So a lot of it is cherry picking from other either not really art aspects, but a lot of it is science chemistry equipment that I'm using, as far as the stands and the clamps that you would typically hold like a glass beaker with as you're doing experiments. That has seemed to work pretty well, as far as both holding lasers but also holding glass and holding mirrors, and just buying like security camera mounts. So like if you had a wireless little IP or wired little camera that you were putting up in the corner somewhere, and you needed a nice mount so you could swivel and get it exactly the way you want it, those are the types of items I'm buying off Amazon and cannibalizing, taking apart and using just certain pieces of it, putting it together with these chemistry type of objects and building what I need to build. Um, I think I've had a couple people reach out as far as like, hey, I've got a nice CNC machine, and I could make anything out of acrylic or whatever. And I think that could be a huge boost, as far as like, I really want to make this one type of installation, but I don't have this piece or this part. Reaching out to somebody like that and having it created, I think is likely the next step. If and when I get stuck and can't figure out, go to the hardware store and build something for it. I think having some help as far as like building materials is going to go a long way. Sorry, got a little tangential there, but I find it interesting.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. So do your mood like emotions or feelings affect the art that's being made, the laser art that's being made on a particular day, or is it just more a matter of mechanical experimentation each time?
Wow, that's a killer question. No one has ever asked me anything even close to that before in all the movies I've done. What a cool question. Um, Man, I am a, kind of an emotional guy when it comes down to a lot of external factors, a lot of internal factors. I don't think overall, as far as like the mood or the actual piece that I'm created, I don't think that that really gets affected. Where my mood or attitude's going to affect me is just going in there and being able to do what I typically do. So being distracted by real life stuff or whatever, being distracted by my own mood or my own inability to get over something that didn't go the way I wanted. Doesn't I don't think it super affects the output in itself. It just affects my process, and I'll find myself in there, not being able to accomplish what I want to accomplish, and finally telling myself, "Come back tomorrow." Let's do it that way. So, and I think that kind of has to do a little bit with the nature in which I go about these things. But that's a really cool question. And I honestly haven't really thought about it. Like I said, I notice when I'm in there and I'm in a pissed off mood. It's not like the greatest creative mindset. I'm never going to make it into the flow state if you're all pissed off. But man, that's super cool.
No, nice. That's interesting to hear. Yeah, and so yeah, I guess more mechanical experimentation, but then the emotions maybe just affect how you go about that experimentation. What would you say is the most difficult part about creating the art or the kind of art that you make? And
Mm.
yeah, yeah, let's start with that question.
So at its physical level, what's hardest about making it, or what's hardest about being a laser artist?
Let's say what's hardest about being a laser artist?
Uh, marketing, marketing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
100%, and that's probably for most artists in this space. But I find it a lot of double-edged swords in this genre. Being the only person in the space who's trying to push this work, gives you that unique factor. But I think it also is, I think it also makes people a little bit reserved because they don't know what they're looking at sometimes, or they do know what they're looking at and they don't have anything to compare it to. So as a collector, and I like to collect myself, if I don't know how something's made, I want to know how it's made, right? Before I just go diving into a collection. But that's the way my brain works. Not everybody is like that, right? Some people are like, oh, that's beautiful, I want it. I don't care how it was made, how long it took you to make it, any of the backstory. Don't give a shit. Just let me have it. And art can do that for me too. But most of the time, I look at it, and especially with a lot of, I'll just go ahead and say, low effort AI stuff coming around, like I'm a little hesitant to pull the trigger and collect something without knowing how was this made. Sometimes it doesn't matter, and in the end, I like it so much. Like you did something awesome, and I fucking want this in my wallet, and I'll buy it. Excuse my French, but other times it's not. So I feel like that if I'm feeling that way, it's probably the same for other collectors and other artists as well that see my art and either A, don't even know what the hell it is, or they think it's a render and it's not. Or B, they know exactly what it is, but they're like, where is this going? Because where is the progression from where you are now? Because it's nobody else has gone down this path. Or just comparing it to other art in general, it's always oranges to apples, and so it's a little bit it's a little frustrating when I feel like my voice isn't being heard, and people don't understand the difficulty that it takes to make this, and it kind of gets overlooked. But you can't, people's attention spans are very short, so you have to market yourself. You have to tweet in the correct ways that people see it. The algo doesn't hate you, and et cetera, et cetera. And so a tweet today was like, hey, how can I share my interactive art? I can't embed it in a tweet so you can play with it. If I go and put a link to it, the algorithm kills it, and or somebody actually has to click the link to then see it. So I'm at this kind of point right now where I'm like, how can I show my art? Because the first 2 seconds that somebody looks at it is really going to be like, are they going to take any interest in it? So can I grab their attention in 2 seconds on Twitter, or not? And that's really, I think, the hardest part for me right now is getting those things conveyed to somebody who does or even doesn't know my work.
Yeah, I guess it's the blessing and the curse of being totally unique in some way. Like you're on your own road on your own path, but yeah, it can be harder sometimes to market it. Um, so sort of last question on the laser setup art kind of thing. Are there any health and safety concerns that like you have to
Yeah.
tend to when you're setting up your whole thing, like whether it's for lasers hitting the eyes or the glasses breaking, or have you had any accidents or anything like that?
Big time. Yeah. Broke something for the first time using it just a couple nights ago. A kid brought home something from Home Goods that was pretty neat but fragile, and I had a mirror, pretty sizable. It was probably like 12-inch by 12-inch mirror glued to a book stand. Was how I was keeping it vertical, and the glue stopped holding, so it fell down and it hit the piece of glass I had purchased, and it hit another mirror, and a lot of shit fell, and only one thing broke. But that does happen, and that really sucks because it's a huge step back in the night when I got to basically tear it all down, clean up any water that spilled because I had water in that piece as well, and kind of almost start from scratch. So that sucks, but that does happen. And the more and more glass I use, the more it happens because I usually don't secure it. It's usually just a balancing act. If I do need to put a spot of hot glue somewhere, I'll do that, but not using any like heavy duty glass glue because I'm typically breaking it down and starting over, right? It's none of this is permanent. But
Hmm.
uh, shift gears to like the laser safety aspect. There's definitely a level of safety there. I, have shifted more to using lower powered stuff. So personally, when I'm in the closet, not a whole lot of concern. I literally work with these things every day, and I know what they're doing. And what their power outputs are. So I don't mind if I have beams like coming towards me or coming towards the camera. In fact, they look beautiful that way. However, when I go in public or I'm doing a setup, a live install somewhere, those are huge concerns. Even if they're not powerful enough to hurt anybody, you don't want to take the chance. So I'm very cognizant of where the beams terminate, and I don't have beams coming out towards the viewer. So it makes the installs a little bit trickier because I mean that is an aspect that I want people to see is those beams coming towards you, but I don't want to risk the safety part of it. So when I make those builds, I have the beams go straight up, or I have them go off to the side to a wall, or terminate on the surface, and I'll put like a beam stop down so the beam gets absorbed there. But that's things that I 100% consider because I don't want to risk it. Then we're talking, making these things bigger and making them life size and making them immersive to where you can walk through a room. There will definitely be lots of planning around that and getting. You have to get a variance if you're doing like concert setups and doing outside. If you're doing audience scanning, I'm not scanning audiences, but I will definitely have all those things lined up. We'll have sections roped off so you can't get it anywhere close to the beams. The bigger you go, the higher power you got to use, and the more risk is involved. So I will definitely be doing a lot more of those types of planning activities in the future as things get larger.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like you might inspire a generation of laser artists. So I want to ask that question to just in case people want to play around with lasers, just to do it safely. You know.
Yeah. I have lasers and I have sold lasers to people, but I give them the full rundown of what you're dealing with, and you will blind yourself for life if get hit with a high enough powered laser. This is irreversible. So um,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
anybody ever, and they do, people reach out and they ask, where can I find a beam or a module I want to start out? And before I give them any links, I give them the rundown and tell them that they need to get goggles and show them exactly the pair of goggles that I have that are, high quality. They're not, if you buy some lasers off eBay, they'll throw in a free pair of air quotes, safety goggles, which are just garbage. You might as well be just wearing regular sunglasses. So there are proper goggles, especially when you're getting into it, especially if you're using higher stuff, especially if you're using mirrors, because it's a lot of times it's the ricochet, right? That you're not ready for. So Yeah, definitely need to preach the safety stuff before I go showing people how to make the art. But I love it when they do reach out and ask.
Cool. Yeah, important part. Okay, so shifting a bit, you mentioned, I know you're a father of five, you're a family man, you have a few animals, and you have a full-time job. I think the question sort of everyone wonders when they hear a situation like that, or the question that I wonder anyway, is like, how do you find the time to still make art and, also post it and engage with the community and be generally active in the space? So yeah, how do you find time?
I'm bad at time management, and it shows. If I am really trying to push hard on social media, there have been times and periods in my life where I struggle to be the family man that I want to be, and have been called out for it. Rightfully so. The wife will tell me like, "Hey, you're not engaged, you're not paying attention, even when you are around," right? So she's definitely been a force to like keep me balanced. So on the flip side, it's my sleep schedule sucks, man. I usually am doing most of my laser art once the kids go to bed. So it's when other people would be winding down and watching TV or something like that. I'm usually in the closet, and if some of those runs will go for 5 hours, and all of a sudden it's 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm not tired. I want to keep going, but I got to go to bed so I can get up and work the next day. So I'm not very good at time management, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I want to have some sort of breakout success so I can give back more time to my real life family and stuff, and not be spending so much time essentially working two jobs. Is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But I guess you make it work for now, however you have to, because yeah, you're still doing everything. So for your career now, you mentioned you work in cybersecurity. Was I?
Yes.
Do you think that influences your creativity in any way, or are they completely separate?
They are separate. However, I mean, some skill sets as far as like being able to do certain types of coding, I think is going to pay off. So I think there's a little bit of cross, just overall knowledge around computers and algorithms and building, even programming small like Raspberry Pis or Arduinos that could come into play. So again, none of that is really security related at all, but it is technology that lives in both realms. And just simply put coding.
Yeah. Okay. For your artistic journey, what do you think have been some really important sort of milestones or moments in your journey so far?
Hmm. I definitely putting myself out there on Instagram for the first time and realizing like how hard it can be as a brand new artist. Like never done art in my life, never had an Instagram account, never even posted anything cool. Trying, starting out with 0 followers and trying to expose the world to laser art. Um, Monumental. So I think I can't say exactly where or when on Instagram when it was finally like, wow, like people actually like this, and I never got like a huge amount of followers, but there was a day when I made a Reddit post, and God, Reddit is a whole nother beast, but where I made it to the front page on Reddit, and it took year or plus of people just completely trashing on it, or getting the 3 or 4 likes or upvotes, whatever you want to call them. Before I went to bed one night and posted a regular thing, and it just fucking exploded and took off. And from that, I got an interview from somebody who was doing the art club over at The Verge. So that's like a technical online magazine, kind of like Gizmodo or whatever. But
Mhm.
someone reached out to me and did an interview, and I got to be on this Verge art club. It's kind of like a blog, I guess, but I had a full blown interview, and that was a really cool like moment where I was like, all right, like people maybe are gonna like take notice on this. I then was convinced too by some other people in the laser community to join the International Laser Display Association and submit my art for like a yearly awards type of thing that they do. And when I did submit, I ended up winning, a couple of first places and a second and a third in a couple of categories. So
Amazing.
getting some of that stuff from actual like other laser hobbyists. The weird thing is there, like no, again, nobody else is really submitting things that look anything like what I'm doing. A lot of it is concert stuff, or they just have, they've programmed projectors to do certain sequences to a song, whether or not that's to a live performance. They could literally use just any song. So again, it's not like I don't fit in even in that community. So getting some feedback from there was a cool thing. And then obviously the Web3, the move to Web3 and actually having like legitimate collectors who aren't just collecting because they think you might blow up, there are plenty of collectors out there, but collectors who are like, wow, I really enjoy what you're doing, and not only how you're making it, but how it turns out. Those are all very gratifying experiences where it's like, okay, this is legitimate, and other people do think it's legitimate too, and maybe I am doing something that's not completely fucking crazy. So I think those are kind of the big milestones in my eyes.
Those are awesome milestones. Thank you for sharing. And since you mentioned Web3, so how has your experience been within the NFT world? Like, what have been your main impressions, or how have your impressions sort of progressed since you started? And
Yeah.
what things have you found that have worked well for you and haven't?
Yeah, my impressions have been so wildly all over the place. Coming in here when in the middle of a bull market and the middle of all the excitement was just unreal. Like a feeling. Like a lot of people in here got in at about the same time. Moved over from Instagram. We were probably all in the same Discord, getting going and throwing stuff out there. It was wild, and just at that point, it was new. Didn't have like super expectations. Still had another job, so this was still like all secondary type of income and secondary, type of life activities, if you will. And then you make a sale, and it's expensive, and ETH is expensive, and people are buying it for half an ETH, and you're making 2 or 3 grand in a day, and you're like, holy shit. And so you go from having zero expectations to like expecting the world very really really quickly if you came in the same time most of us came in here. And then you ride the market down, and you see a lot of people exit the space, and you see a lot of your collectors exit the space. So now, we're kind of in that gray area where I feel like the market is kind of picking up a little bit, and some other people are coming back. We're still, people are still coming in, being brand new to the space, and don't know what it was like during the bull rush, and they don't know what it was like a year ago. So there's always this huge mix of people, and I'm pretty much talking about Twitter, honestly, that are seeing your posts and reacting one way or the other, or not reacting, and you're always fighting to get even engagement. So it's moved from this like really euphoric, I don't even know what's going to happen, to even more euphoric, things are great and I'm going to like do this for a living, to man, this is really really tough. And even though I've got like a nice backing of supporters and collectors, like I haven't made a decent sale in 4 months, let's say. So there are these roller coasters of up and down, and the imposter syndrome or just the self-doubt, and it can be mixed with some anger and some, you see other people selling crazy stuff, and I think it's really important to realize that if somebody's selling, that's awesome. That's a win. That means there's people collecting. That means there's still money out there. This thing is still alive, right? And not to take it as why are they selling and I'm not selling? Because again, it's still a growing community. People are still going to be, still to this day, even after being here for years, people every single day is like, oh, I didn't realize that was real. So I mean, there's still going to be this exposure curve for anybody coming in here to get noticed. And then what has worked and what has not worked was kind of one of your questions. So rushing never works. In my experience, rushing anything never works. And that's usually like, oh, I just made this really cool piece. I want to mint it. I can mint it right now, and somebody's going to buy it in 5 minutes. Like, that's not really how it's going to happen. However, like, I'm not great at marketing, and I'm making the realization right now, like, marketing can actually hurt me a little bit. So if I go and make some sort of preview, hey, I'm having a drop coming out in 3 days, like, and I'm trying to make it like everybody else makes their previews, it's going to end up potentially hurting the piece in the end. So I think it's really realizing where your strengths lie, and for me, my thought was slow down, always promo something for at least a week before you drop it. And now I'm realizing maybe I don't actually have to do that. So slow down, number one, is I think one of the things everybody needs to do in their life, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, is take a half a second to think about how you're going to react or how you're going to move, and then actually move with intention and not just kind of throw it out there. But there are so many dualities to every one of my statements. It's also like, don't be afraid to put it out there, because you're going to sit on it and nobody's going to see it, or you want to wait because you've got a bunch of stuff minted. Well, that's not really what's going on here. Like, you are creating something and it either kicks ass or it doesn't. But you don't necessarily need to rush it. That piece is going to still be there tomorrow. So, like, be a little bit crafty in how you're doing your tweets, because you do want it to be seen. But also, don't force yourself to make a promo video or something if you suck at making promo videos. Either have somebody else do it, or let the art speak for itself. Right? Just put the final piece out there, and maybe say it's coming in a couple days, but you don't really need to try to make, like I said, I keep going back to this promo video. It's something I'm realizing can really actually hurt your art in the end.
Mm. Yeah, the slow down and move with intention. And that's a really good piece of advice, I think, that a lot of people can benefit from. And yeah, in general, I guess it has been a roller coaster, the NFT world, since the start for me as well. And
That's a roller coaster.
yeah,
Insane.
definitely, yeah, and I guess it's just a process of trial and error as well, still, because everything's changing all the time in the
Yep.
NFT world. So it is trial and error. There's no real formula for it yet. Your art, I feel like it has an immersive feel to it, and it sort of makes me feel like I'm in a different space sometimes, or like environment altogether, if I'm properly looking at it. Almost like a
Yeah.
nightclub. I think I mentioned this to you before, but it reminds me of nightclubs sometimes. Have you thought about sort of making fully immersive versions of your art, or have you done this already? Whether it's for the metaverse or for physical spaces.
Yes, both. So I do think that's where it's going to end up, is being interactive. I say interactive. I want to try to keep interactivity, but sometimes interactivity is just being there, right? And being immersed in it. So I do think that's where it's going to head, is where, how can I make this bigger? I think in between, in the right now, is the metaverse aspect. And a collection that I'm actually putting together is with the 360 photos, where you can either, on a website in kind of 2D, click around and spin around the camera. But if I place the camera like in the middle of my setup, then it kind of puts you as the viewer in the middle of my setup, and you can kind of look around and spin around and see all the different angles. But then those same 360 photos and videos work really well in VR. So if you do have a VR headset, the same 360 photo that you can click and spin around, you go and click the VR button, and all of a sudden it puts you in that same space. And instead of clicking around, you're turning your head, so you're like a tiny person in the middle of this giant setup. So I think using that and that technology, especially while time is not on my side, to basically like leave my job for a month and build a huge install, is kind of focusing on what can I do to bring people into the closet with me, is kind of how I think about it. So if you do strap on the if you do strap on the headset, or you do go to a website and you're clicking around, like, can you actually feel like you're there with me? And can you see the small details, a lot more details than just a still image would capture, because you can't see to the left and to the right. You can't see how I did this clamp. You can't see that this mirror is hanging off from above. But if I put it in a 360 photo, those are all things you can see. So I really think that I'm going to try to lean on that a lot to bring people closer to my art, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I feel like your art will definitely be felt even more so when it's in an immersive field. And yeah, what about physical spaces, like actual, let's say, buildings or venues?
So, to date, when I have taken my stuff on the road, what I've basically built is like a replication, or the same size, same scale as what I'm doing in the closet. So it's like at max, like 3 foot by 3 foot, and then maybe a couple feet tall, glass sculpture, if you will, with a bunch of lasers going around it and through it and over it and all that stuff. I do think pretty soon. I'm going to be looking at a permanent install to where I will do one of those setups, like a typical LaserLewDude little installation, but I'm also going to have at my disposal the rest of the room. And it's not an enormous room. I'm guessing it's kind of like the size of a normal office in a house or a normal bedroom. But being able to use that space will be the biggest space that I'm using to date. Like I haven't really expanded to use that. So I'm not going to be going, having lasers coming through the room where people need to duck and move around, to avoid them. I'll keep them, high up or going straight down the wall or, away from everybody because of the safety aspect. But it will be a challenge. Anytime I'm taking this stuff out of my safe space, out of the closet where I know where everything is, and I have plenty of places to clamp things and hang lasers and closet rods left and right. Everything's right there. Taking it outside and trying to fill a space is a huge challenge, but I'm looking forward to it because I think that's where it's going to go. Is yeah, you can wow them and have them walk up to something and they're there, but what if they just walk through the door and they're inside of a huge box full of lasers and they can walk over and look at your little install? That's cool, but really you can't really escape it, right? If you walk in and it's just all around you, I think that's going to be a certain wow factor that I haven't achieved yet and can't really achieve without that physical immersion.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that stage of your art. Okay, so just last couple questions. What is your definition of success?
Well, success I think is tied to happiness. Just in an overall kind of life type of thing. If you're successful, you're happy. Like money helps you maybe remain healthy, maybe can help you get closer to that happiness, but money isn't the end all. I think in this space, when people say, you've made it, or we're all going to make it, the whole "you're not going to make it" type of thing. I think when somebody makes it is when they are basically here, and this is how they're living their life. So they are making money if it takes money, right? Like you might not need money. Maybe you've inherited everything and you're here, and people are collecting, and you don't have to, or you can give it away for free, but you're able to basically spread your work and spread the vibes and spread, the actual feelings that come with your work as a success. But in my eyes, if I can get out of my corporate job and make art for a living, just cover the bills and make sure my family's healthy and safe and insurance is paid for. To my that's when I've air quote made it in this space, and would consider that being successful. Um, so I think there's kind of two different goals there. There's one, like, how do I just maintain being a human being and providing for my family, and that's a success. But I also think there's a success in what makes me happy, and I think being able to provide for my family, obviously successful, but as far as like you have a career, you have a way to move forward, you know that you're not going to be struggling for money. I think that's a whole nother level of success where at least that's where my goals are is that I'm not stretched so thin, and I can give my family all the time and attention they deserve, and give my craft all the time and attention it deserves, because right now it's split, and neither one of them are getting 100%. So that's where I want it to be, and that's when I will be considered successful, at least in my own eyes.
That's a great vision. Yeah, I really respect that. And what are you most excited about these days?
Ooh. um, I think domed ceilings and planetariums. So on the same lines of doing the virtual reality type of stuff, that those same type of images work really well in dome ceilings. And I've been working on a collaboration with somebody for well over like a year and a half, where hopefully soon we're going to have some art inside of some dome ceilings and planetariums across the U.S. And maybe even use it for some PTSD type of treatments for some vets. So we've started looking into that as well, where we would be able to provide headsets for veterans with PTSD and use our art as a type of meditation. So
Mhm.
if we can get our art inside of some domes and get people to see it at that level. That's a level of immersion that I think right now is the quickest path for me to be like more immersive. But then, man, anytime you can help people with your art, I mean, that's just like a whole nother thing. We didn't even scratch the surface here. It's, take money out of the picture, take everything out of the picture, and all of a sudden you just like literally are changing somebody's life. Like giving myself goosebumps just thinking of that. So that's really really exciting. I don't have a whole lot of control on it. My partner's really the one who's seeds and doing all the legwork, and and is going out to these dome ceilings and doing practice runs with them. So I'm kind of sitting on the sidelines, getting updates as I can, and just hoping it goes. But that's this little excitement inside of me that's been building up for a while.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing any progress on that. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck with it. It sounds promising. Yeah, I think using your art for therapeutic purposes could definitely be a next level thing. Um, so yeah, looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. It's been amazing talking with you, Louis. Do you have anything coming in the future that you want people to know about, or any other conclusive remarks before we close this?
It's such a cool question because that's I think really one of my weaknesses is really providing a vision for my collectors as to where this is going, because I do try so many different things with new technologies and new whatever, right? So being more planned out and kind of breaking my work together or breaking my work apart into more clean. I don't want to silo it, but being very, very, you like the 3D stuff. So this collection is going to be for the 3D stuff instead of it all kind of blending all over the place. That's really what and that comes a lot from externally, not me saying, hey, you need to do this, but other people saying, hey, you need to do this, because I can see from the outside that your collectors are kind of like, what is going to be next. So I think moving with intention and being a little bit more, or whether I pay somebody or I trade art or something to have some sort of manager let me know if this is a good idea, or take your time and set this collection up instead of just throwing everything out there into the wind. I think that's hopefully how I kind of shift gears going forward.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, looking forward to everything you have coming. It's been amazing talking with you and getting to know more about your process and your journey. I think you have a lot of unique contributions that you're giving the world right now, and you're very busy with a lot of different things, and you're definitely making an impact in your own life in different ways. It's a pleasure to know you and to witness your journey. And yeah, thank you for sharing time with me on this podcast. Really appreciate it.
Nima, you are so awesome, and I will literally do it whenever. I'm thrilled that you had me, and I'm happy that I'm here right now. So thank you, man.
My pleasure, man. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. And again, thank you, Louis, for joining me and sharing your story. I really appreciate this.
You bet, man. Love you.
Lots of love.
Bye.